Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Former Chief Medical Officer Dr. Stephen King is lauding the government for taking steps toward the containment of COVID-19. However, he believes there is still more work to be done. Rochelle Gonzalez tells us more.
2 weeks ago, former Chief Medical Officer Dr. Stephen King was a guest on Hot 7 TV's The Hot Seat, where he made some suggestions to the government of St. Lucia in relation to the national fight against COVID-19. Someone was certainly listening and took his advice, and for that, the good doc expressed elation. He not only lauded the efforts, but he also expressed hopes that St. Lucia has a fighting chance in the global struggle.
I think it's important to congratulate the Ministry of Health and the government for the moves that have been made. I think they're absolutely the right moves, and I'm very pleased with what we have done, because we're ramping up our response to this virus. We understand it, we know what we have to do, and I think we're beginning to do that, and I think that's excellent. As you know, we are moving into the OKEU on Friday. That's beautiful, because we will then have the VH converted into the respiratory hospital. We have a task force looking at that to make sure that the patient flows are good and also they're safe. We also, thankfully, to the government of Cuba, we have 100 Cuban health professionals who are coming in on Friday to help us, especially with that center. So a lot of things have happened since we last spoke. And that's really, in a week, just in a week, and that's really beautiful.
The former CMO said the government has bought the nation some time to contain the virus. However, there are still areas in need of work.
The last one that I think needs to be put in place is the National Command System. The reason for that is that with the National Command System, we can make sure that we have good supply chain, we can make sure that we have good communication right down to our household. So, because we have a beautiful health infrastructure, interestingly enough, that goes right from CMO's office through all the hospitals, right down into the communities, through our polyclinics, our district hospitals, and our health centers. So once you create a good incident command system all the way through, so that you have people on the ground that are following directives and doing what they're supposed to do, we can do maximum containment.
Dr. King said St. Lucians should be grateful for the efforts being made and that they in turn should make a special effort to help make the process easier.
It's very important. All of us are involved in this war against this virus. So social distancing, keep your distance, do not be complacent. Because you do not believe there's a lot of infection in the community, do not make that assumption. You cannot see this virus. The virus starts with asymptomatic spreading. So that is, people without any symptoms will be spreading. You don't know. Now, we don't know ourselves because we will be ramping up the testing as of today. So we will begin to know over the next few days exactly what we are dealing with. So I want solutions to be very vigilant, to in fact re-engage themselves, reaffirm themselves in social distancing and their personal protection, their rigorous hand washing, their rigorous cough etiquette, everything like that. Please, because you don't want to get it and you don't want to spread it.
Dr. King said everyone needs to play their part, as the current situation is no joking matter. He said hopefully, through collaborative efforts, St. Lucia will not end up like other nations with high numbers of infected cases. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Rochelle Gonzalez.
Sandals Resorts in St. Lucia has joined with its sister resorts all over the Caribbean to provide care packages for its team members on island. Like many hotels all over the world, Sandals Resorts International recently announced that it will be closing all its resorts between the 30th of March to the 15th of May as a result of the coronavirus pandemic that has swept the world. In order to soften the economic fallout, Sandals will be paying team members a portion of their salaries during the closure and will also ensure that all their benefits remain intact. The resort group has gone further and created care packages which it is distributing to its team members throughout the Caribbean and also right here in St. Lucia. The care packages contain a number of essential food items, including rice, sugar, flour, milk, juice, eggs, fruits and vegetables, and some other items. General Manager of Sandals Halcyon Beach Resort and Spa, Christopher Elliott, said making sure its team members are okay is a priority for the company during this difficult time. National Security Minister Herman Gill Francis says though the method used by prisoners to voice their concerns about COVID-19 was inappropriate, their grievances have been noted and as such will be addressed. Jacques Wooding reports.
COVID-19 has spurred governments worldwide to advise the public to maintain social distancing and to self-quarantine when necessary. However, these measures can hardly be accomplished inside a correctional facility. The general health of prisoners is a matter that is often under scrutiny, with diet and sanitation concerns being some of the most contentious issues. In light of this, the World Health Organization, WHO, has issued an interim guidance document to provide information to staff and healthcare workers working inside prisons on how to prevent and address a potential disease outbreak. Here in St. Lucia, Minister for National Security Herman Gill Francis outlined the steps currently being taken at the Bordelais Correctional Facility to ensure the safety of staff and inmates.
We are taking other steps, and the Commissioner alluded to it that the custody suites will be used, because we will not be able to arrest somebody today and then take you tomorrow to Bordelais. That might contaminate Bordelais. So you're going to spend some time in quarantine at custody suites until you're healthy enough or you've been proved to be not infected, and then be processed to Bordelais.
Crammed inside a prison cell is the last place one would want to be as the outbreak of an infectious disease ravages the outside world. Francis disclosed that efforts are being made to seek bail for nearly 40 inmates in an effort to ease tensions at the facility.
In a place like the prison, it is very volatile. We saw what happened in Trinidad, and prisoners will try anything to gain their freedom. But we're trying to push some of the cases still. Magistrates' courts are still operating, so we're trying to deal with sexual offenses, child maintenance offenses, and other things that we can expedite very quickly. There are some persons at Bordelais we're looking to see, maybe about 30 to 40 of them, that we can try and see whether we can get bail for them.
The minister emphasized that controlling the spread of infection in detention settings is essential for preventing large-scale outbreaks, and the decision to suspend visits to the facility was made in adherence to social distancing protocols. For Hot 7 News, I am Jacques Wooding.
The Director of Human Services, Beverly Ann Poyot, has assembled a team to offer psychosocial support to the population during the COVID-19 pandemic. The stress management team was activated by NEMO as mandated for first responders and frontline workers during times of disaster. However, Poyot says under this crisis, there is a wide cross-section of people who require such stress management services.
From the onset, even before we had any announced cases, we recognized that just the whole issue of COVID-19 and the kind of damage, the rapid rate of increase that we were seeing in other countries caused a lot of fear, a lot of panic, and a lot of anxiety in our persons. Way before we had the partial scale down in operations in St. Lucia, persons were already asking, can we stay home? Do I have to come in? And all of these kinds of things. So we recognize that there's a certain level of anxiety within our general population.
Poyot says for those in quarantine and isolation, the experience takes a significant psychological toll as well.
We would recognize that these are persons who were coming back into St. Lucia, most of them nationals, some of them visitors, coming with one thing in mind, to have fun, to enjoy, and so on, and then nationals coming back home to be with their families, and now they are placed in isolation. So we have certain issues that would come up here, and we recognize too that that is another category of persons who would need some kind of psychological, or I should say psychosocial support.
The Department of Human Services remains accessible to the public as its offices remain open under COVID-19 protocols, with workers taking on a shift system and field officers working via telephone. With mounting concerns over mental health management amidst the measures implemented locally and internationally to contain the spread of COVID-19, the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, UNICEF, held a virtual press conference to interface with parents on possible means of maintaining a sense of normalcy in their children's everyday lives.
Recent developments in the global COVID-19 situation have led to restrictive measures such as the closure of ports to incoming passengers, a cease in non-essential business activity, closure of schools and places of entertainment, and shopping restrictions, all of which have left citizens on edge. Research by the World Health Organization regarding mental health considerations during the COVID-19 crisis have uncovered a number of psychosocial challenges which could severely impact young children during this time because of a halt in socialization practices. The United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, UNICEF, has spearheaded educational initiatives for parents on this issue, and on March 27, 2020, a virtual conference was held via their Facebook platform, allowing parents to seek advice from UNICEF consultant and counseling psychologist Nicole Lynch. Lynch, a parent herself, stressed the need for structure within the home to become somewhat reflective of what a child is exposed to in the school environment.
One of the things that I learned as I was doing some training with conscious discipline is just how much our children, and we ourselves as adults as well, crave structure because our brains respond to that in a way that says, this structure makes me feel safe. I know what to expect. And in that, I can kind of settle in with all of the unknowns. I know when I get up in the morning, this is what my routine looks like. As we live in this space together for however much longer we'll be following the guidance of our governments, we do so with a sense that here as a family, this is how we are in this space at this time.
Lynch underscored that parents may be doing more harm than good by subjecting students to generic online educational platforms and worksheet exercises. She suggested that parents instead work with their children to identify learning possibilities within the home.
Sometimes when we think about learning, we think about sitting at the table with a worksheet and, moving through from one to the next on the worksheet. What I encourage us to do is to see life as learning and life at home as learning. So with the young ones, as you're cooking with them in the kitchen and you're counting as you measure and you're teaching them about less than and more than. So one of the things I really want to encourage us to do is to use those day-to-day activities, sit and think about where are the learning opportunities in this.
She noted that children have been found to look to adults for their emotional and behavioral cues, and as such it is important for adults to display maturity and seek factual information on the pandemic to keep their families well informed. For Hot 7 News, I am Jacques Wooding.
Thank you, Jaco. This is the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Stay with us. There's more coming up after the break.